Hey, everybody, about to record Jay Leno backstage at The Tonight Show. So real quick, I want to do this live read for you. These are our sponsors, U.S. Storage Centers. My garage is finally clean. You know whose garage will never be clean? Jay Leno's, because he has 175,000 cars. Now, the first person to email me how many axles that is will win nothing. Put your stuff in storage at U.S. Storage Centers. If you got stuff you can't bear to get rid of, but it's cramping your garage, your house, your closets, run and rent a space at U.S. Storage Centers. Do it now. Clean it up. Just go to my website, jaymohr.com, click on the U.S. Storage Center banner, and they're cool because they'll give you 3 months for up to 50% off based on availability, and you're going to get a $25 moving supply credit. Boxes, locks, whatever you need. These are good people. One of the first people to hop on actually got in touch with me on my website, jaymohr.com, and emailed me and said, we want to sponsor your podcast, U.S. Storage Centers. They support Cureit.org. That's Kureit, Cureit.org. It's a kidney cancer research charity. You contribute by rounding up to the nearest dollar with any of your purchases there, and all of that money goes to charity. They match it. Dollar for dollar. That's U.S. Storage Centers. Go to jaymohr.com, click on their banner, let them know that you know that they exist. Get rid of your dirty things. And now here's Jay Leno.
Put your name on it. Just put your name on it. That's all I say. Be a man or a woman. Put your name on it.
Well, I'd like to hear about it, potheads.
How the fuck you gonna know how to be great if you don't study greatness? Look at the game tape.
Oh, yeah!
Hey, you know, you're not a bad-looking man, Mr. Gals.
But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair.
Now do what I do and say what I say and make me proud. Fall in? Yeah!
You're a pretty big get, Mr. Jay Leno.
Yeah, I'm sure I am. Yeah.
Who do you think? You were always, you just came off stage. Aretha Franklin brought the house down. I did like to call out to her friend Smokey.
Right, yeah, there you go.
In the middle of the Queen of Soul's performance, you go, shout out to my man Smokey.
That's what we do here.
And Will and Tim. It was like a roll call for everybody. It was great.
That's what it is.
Good show?
Yeah, it was a good show tonight. Everybody was good. Vince is really funny.
Vince Vaughn, Pasternak?
Travis Pastrana. But close, yeah. Good. I could see you're a real car guy.
And then the Queen of Soul. I wanted you on the podcast, and you were really nice in helping me promote it. But you're on the Mount Rushmore of American comedy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
no. I'm being serious. I know you can be self-deprecating as much as you want, but the fact of the matter is, you are. And I've never, ever heard anybody ask you a single question about you doing stand-up comedy.
What do you want to know?
All right. You do, 160 dates a year?
Yeah, I try to do 3 a week if I can.
3 a week while hosting The Tonight Show?
You know, you can't be a marathon runner and just run marathons. You got to run every day if you want to run marathons. And I don't have a file and I don't write anything down. So I need to keep 2 hours in my head. And if you know how it is. If you don't do it,
right,
it atrophies and you forget. You know, the stage is not a normal place to be. But if you're on it every day, it becomes normal. Like, you must hear this. You know, people always say, oh, I'd rather go in shark-infested waters than stand in front of a group and talk.
Number one fear in the world.
Yeah, but for comics, it's nothing. But if you're a comic who hasn't worked in a month, and you walk out on stage and you start your act, and some guy goes, where am I? You get thrown. Yeah. So you need to do it.
You become one of those people that would rather be in shark waters.
You need to do it, not every day, but certainly a lot.
So you're saying I need to do it more?
Yeah, you need to do it more.
You do 160 days.
Because you know what it is? You don't get bad. You know, musicians can take a year off and go in the basement and write an album and come out and it's great. Comics can't go in the basement and write an act. Well, you know, maybe some can, but I can't. I need, the audience gives me another 40%. I'll write a joke, and then when I get out there in front of an audience, I'll say it, and suddenly it's tighter and more concise.
Right.
Because they're looking at me, and I'm just thinking faster. You know, when you're writing, you're thinking slow. And when you're on stage, you think fast. And when you think fast, that's when the funniest stuff comes out.
Do you ever get amazed, like, when you're on stage, sometimes you'll say, and when I mean you, I mean just like every comic,
Right.
you'll say a tag, but it was never in your mind. They hear it the exact same time you hear it.
Yeah, that happens.
It's like Zen in the art of stand-up comedy, where everything, the time just sort of stops. So you go, and you actually will have a moment on stage where you'll go, wow, that's really funny. But then it's not till you get off stage where you have to ask your friends, what did I say? Because it was never really in your mind.
I don't know if I have to ask my friends what did I say, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. That makes sense.
This is really an intervention to get you to just break off like 14 of those dates from me.
Yeah. Let me see what I
That's
can
really
do.
why I'm here. And not
Yeah,
the Hermosa ones. I want the big one.
That's going to be difficult. Yeah.
I want
Have you
the
done
big-
much corporate?
Yeah, I do. It took me a long time to settle into the fact that I can, in fact, stand for an hour and be G-rated.
If you have an hour of stand-up, you have 25 corporate. It's just a different.
I think it's less.
It's less. It's unbelievable.
And they go, well, you said erection. You won't be back next
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
what? Erection?
Yeah, exactly.
I saw that on Nickelodeon.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm embellishing the whole
Yeah,
Nickelodeon
exactly,
part through
exactly.
erection. You, how old were you when you decided this might be something I want to do, this whole show?
19.
That's old, really, for most comics, isn't it?
Well, I mean, my first show was October '69 at the Bitter End in New York. That was my first time on stage. Yeah.
At the famous Bitter End.
Well,
But
they used to do audition nights. It wasn't like I was.
But you weren't 19 when you said, I think I want to do stand-up comedy, were you?
Well, I grew up in a little town in Andover, Massachusetts. I remember the lady up the street said, you can't be a comedian unless your father was a comedian. I mean, that's the way it works in Hollywood. If your father wasn't a comedian, you can't be a comedian. I mean, I never met a comic.
That was her way of saying Jewish?
Probably, yeah. I never met another comic. I didn't really know how you got into show business. I worked for probably 6 months to a year before I really met other comics because there weren't any in New England. I mean, in '69 and '70, it was the war, and it was guys with, guitars. Stop your war machine with the flashlight under the chin, and they flick it up and flick it and turn the light on and off. All that kind of crap.
And you saw a spotlight instead of a flashlight.
That's right. I saw a spotlight. That's
You said,
right.
"Wait a
Thank you.
minute. This
Thank
looks
you.
like a spotlight.
Yeah, it was just different.
But it's weird that Boston became like sort of the most fertile comedy ground.
Well, it's an odd place to grow up because you have this odd mix of liberals and racists, and they all live in the same community, and it's a quirky place.
Very well-educated townies.
Yeah, you have
That's
educated
my
townies.
my synopsis.
You
not
have
yours.
that. I mean, it's the only state that voted to repeal the federal seatbelt law. You can't make us wear a seatbelt. It's like the stupidest kind of things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different. So out of that sort of breeding ground comes a lot of comics.
How old were you when you? I mean, did you watch comics as a kid?
I did. I was a huge. The comic that was most influential to me was probably Robert Klein. Because everybody else was older, Alan King, Shecky Greene, all these kind of guys, older Jewish. I watched the comics my parents watched, and they were funny, but they didn't connect with me. Carlin, certainly. And then when Robert Klein came along, he was a guy maybe 10 years older than me, physically kind of had the same kind of upbringing, middle-class kind of kid, didn't grow up in the Bowery or the Lower East Side like all the other comics. And he talked about things that were interesting to me. He made fun of the music of the period, the TV shows of the period, especially the politics of the period. Alan King, as great as all those guys were, they didn't make fun of Nixon. They didn't make fun of the Vietnam War. And wow, he was a guy that was kind of talking to me. And then certainly Carlin, too. Of course.
Was Carlin ever on the show when you hosted?
Many times.
Really?
Many times with Carlin.
Pardon my ignorance.
And Richard Pryor. I knew Richie. I made it my goal to follow Richard Pryor every night at the Comedy Store because he would come in, and when he would get ready to do an album, he would work every night for like a month and a half. And I would always say, can I go on right after him? Because nobody else wanted to.
It's a death sentence.
No, but that's when you find out if something is funny. And I realized jokes that were marginal were nothing, so I got rid of them. Jokes that were okay were barely marginal, so I kept a few of those. And jokes that were funny after following Richie were really funny. I knew these are jokes that will work anywhere. Because, comics tend to gravitate to where their audience is, I always hear comics go, I only play these kind of rooms. I only do colleges. No, that's because you can't make those other people laugh.
Right.
If you're making these people laugh, move on. the bad thing about being in Boston was there were a lot of guys that would become huge stars in Boston, making $1,000 a weekend, which was huge money in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And they'd go to Connecticut, and nobody knew who they were. But they had material about Mayor White, and they had material about Boston and the pier. And
Sure.
Yeah, they had all this
Steve
localized
Sweeney
stuff.
sticking his gut out. And doing
Sweeney. I love Sweeney.
Gavin.
Nobody. Oh, my
Don
God.
Gavin's probably the funniest guy I've ever been around
Don
in my
Gavin
life.
is unbelievably
Bought a house
funny.
in the Cape, just tapped out. Like, I'm as famous as Boston could be.
That's what I'm saying. But then when you go to Hartford, they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And my thing was always when you got good in one place, just get out, because it's like a drug. People, you think I'm funny here, then you go someplace where you're not funny, then you run back to the place where they think you're funny. No, you run the other way.
I always had a similar thing like that. My philosophy to comedy, like there's a lot of alternative comics and I've had them on the podcast, where I've said, like, my thing was always, no matter who the audience is, I got to get them. Like, if it's a prom show,
Right.
I'm going to get them. If it's corporate, I'm going to get them. If it's
Right.
urban, I'm going to get them. And the alternative comics are like, I'm going to make them laugh my way. But that's not how it goes. Like, that's not your job. If it's your job.
Neither is either right nor wrong. It's just...
Well, I disagree.
It's what you choose
I
as...
think you're wrong.
What you think... I mean, I've always been a Big Tent comic. That's why I do The Tonight Show. You have a clever joke, then you have a smart joke, then you have a silly joke. You try to reach the whole audience. I never try to be... I don't try to know more than the audience. I try to know exactly what I think the audience knows, and you send your material that way. People like you to follow what they believe, veer off, and then come back. I mean, a classic example that I remember years ago I did a joke about Reagan at the White House Correspondent Dinner. I said, President Reagan is against the electric chair. He feels they should have electric bleachers or something like that, just because there were so many people on death row.
Good joke.
But against the electric chair,
Made me laugh.
people go, what? Reagan? Oh, no, he really wants to kill all the people. I mean, it was just,
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked that one, but it just came into my head.
I don't think people in America, well, maybe they do, I don't know. But I've always been super impressed. First of all, you've always been like an incredible friend of the comics. Like Jimmy Norton's a dear friend of mine,
Jim
and you
Norton's
have
a
him
great
on all the
comic.
time. And
Oh,
you've always
okay.
been super cool with me.
Yeah.
And Jimmy and I talk about you a lot behind your back.
Oh, that's
I don't know
right.
if you know this, not Jay, but Jim Norton and I talk behind your back. But we always marvel at, like, your monologue is, 10 minutes, pretty much?
You got to write 14. You settle on between 11 and 13 minutes. Yeah.
So I don't think people listening realize when you watch The Tonight Show and Jay Leno walks out and does a 11-minute monologue, I don't care how big a staff it is. That's really like building the pyramids weekly.
It's a lot of work. It's a funny. Louis C.K. and I had a funny thing, and I said, I did his show, the Louis show, and we just had a funny exchange where we ad-libbed it, and I said, I was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, I was on the cover of Time magazine. I used to be you, Louis. I said, I used to be the hip guy. But then when you're on TV every day, nobody's hip every day. It doesn't happen. You then no matter how hip you are, you become mainstream. I used to say that about Sam Kinison. Sam Kinison had this great bit about necrophilia, and it was hilarious. And then you go, okay, after you talk about having sex with dead people, what's your next bit? And then Sam died right after that, so it was sealed in cement.
It's on his tombstone.
It was just a classic Sam Kinison
It says
bit.
Kinison, it's
Yeah.
the dates, and then it's the bit. And but it's very nice. In all fairness, it's a
the
very
real
nice
trick is
font.
not to boil the water. The real trick is to keep the water hot, because if it boils, it just evaporates. So you just try to keep that pan full, keep it hot, and keep it moving.
When you do stand-up and
Yeah.
your corporate stuff, I see you in Vegas on the billboards. I've not seen your act in person in
Hey,
Vegas.
thanks.
Next time. I know you get a door deal, so I'll kick in
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
because I know you're hurting. How does the line ever blur between the amount? I mean, there must be hours. I mean, there has to be, just logically, hours of monologue material that never gets used.
Yeah.
Is there just a wall in your mind? Like, no, that's...
There's such a huge difference between a monologue joke and a nightclub joke.
Sure.
Because a monologue joke is a free joke. People are at home. They don't pay to watch this. They turn on the TV, and they hear a monologue joke. You go to Vegas, they paid anywhere from $45 to $100, whatever it is, for a ticket. It better be a lot funnier than what they heard in the monologue. And a monologue joke, the monologue is
You
like...
don't think they expect exactly that level? like the
No,
monologue level?
it's a little bit It's a little bit different because the monologue is essentially a newspaper. You open with the big story of the day, then you move to special interests, then you move to sports, and usually end with a joke entertainment, a la Kardashian, whoever, Bruce Jenner, whatever it might be. But you always open with the big story of the day, and you move through it quickly like that. I mean, in the monologue, you do 34 to 40 jokes in 14 minutes.
See, I never knew that. I think that's a number that to email me how many axles that is. We'll win nothing. Put your stuff in storage at U.S. storage centers. If you got stuff you can't bear to get rid of, but it's cramping your garage, your house, your closets, run and rent a space at U.S. storage centers. Do it now. Clean it up. Just go to my website, jaymohr.com, click on the storage centers, go to jaymohr.com, click on their banner, let them know that you know that they exist. Get rid of your dirty things. And now here's Jay Leno.
Put your name on it. Just put your name on it. That's all I say. Be a man or woman. Put your name on it.
Well, I'd like to hear about it, potheads.
How the fuck you gonna know how to be great if you don't study?
Hey, everybody, about to record Jay Leno backstage at The Tonight Show. So real quick, I want to do this live read for you. These are our sponsors, U.S. Storage Centers. My garage is finally clean. You know whose garage will never be clean? Jay Leno's, because he has 175,000 cars. Now, the first person, U.S. Storage Center banner, and they're cool because they'll give you 3 months for up to 50% off based on availability, and you're going to get a $25 moving supply credit. Boxes, locks, whatever you need. These are good people. One of the first people to hop on actually got in touch with me on my website, jaymohr.com, and emailed me and said, we want to sponsor your podcast, U.S. Storage Centers. They support Cureit.org. That's Kureit, Cureit.org. It's a kidney cancer research charity. You contribute by rounding up to the nearest dollar with any of your purchases there, and all of that money goes to charity. They match it dollar for dollar. That's U.S.